You've just been told to send somebody stems. What do? This video will hopefully answer that question and give you some etiquette, good practices, and ways to make sure you don't send something that isn't usable to somebody else. The last thing we want is the person that's either mixing, mastering, maybe you're doing a remix with somebody or collaborating, you want someone to lay down vocals, is for them to be really annoyed when they drag your stems into your project, and that's what they remember about working with you. When they drag your stems into their project, whether that's Pro Tools or Ableton or FL or even Logic Pro X, you want them to be shocked at how easy it is to work with you and how easy it was to set it up and get to the fun part of whatever they're going to be doing. So, where do we start? Firstly, make sure that on your end, everything is organized. This may seem redundant because you're going to be sending files, and why do I need to keep my thing organized? And the reason we want that is because you're going to be exporting a lot of stuff out. Luckily, this song is only 13 inserts of pretty generic guitar playing and other stuff. But when you've got 50, 70, 80 on EDM records or pop records where there might be 30 layers of vocals and 8 pianos and all kinds of other stuff happening, you want to make sure you know where everything is going. You do not want to be sitting here exporting out stems for 30 minutes only to import it yourself for checking and realize that there's a piano and a vocal on the same track. Make sure everything is routed, color-coded if that helps, and easily seeable at a glance. This project already has that, but if you have a project like some projects in BandLab where things are named, instead of guitar, this might be named Audio 100 something or Insert 9 or whatever, rename it and make sure you know what it is. There's a few things we need to do before we do that, though. We want to make sure on our mixer inserts that nothing is too quiet. This may seem counterintuitive because you probably have a rough mix already of the song you're going to send. And if that rough mix is pretty good and they're not going to do a full mix master for you and you just need to send a demo over, you don't need to change these levels. But if you're giving it to someone who's going to do a mix master whole thing, we don't want them to have to crank a signal with a ton of gain addition plugins if it's too quiet, especially drums. If I solo this drum kit, it sounds great in here. If I turn this down and send it to somebody at that volume, for them to turn it up, their fader is going to have to either go above this point, which is only about 5 to 6 decibels of room to go up. So if they want it louder, they're then going to have to go and add a gain plugin and crank it, and now it gets weird. So just save them the time and send in a strong signal, because it's much easier for them to have to turn it down and rebalance it in a good way than it is for them to have to arbitrarily crank it up and do weird gain matching to try and make it fast. And that's just going to be wasting time that they could be spending doing the creative mixing that you want them to do. Secondly, you're going to want to go through all of your inserts and make sure you get rid of anything that's not essential to the sound. For example, the bass in this song is already compressed because I've assumed that I'm going to compress it, and I like it in this little demo run. If you're sending this to somebody who's going to do a full, clean mix and master, this compression is going to be locked in if you export it out. So just bypass it. This is a harmonic saturator. I could argue that's part of the sound, but my mix engineer is probably going to want to experiment with a couple different saturators. They might prefer a different one. They might like a certain other thing, and I don't want to rob them of that choice. So just bypass that. On this pad, there's no inserts. A lot of these don't really have inserts. On this felt piano, this reverb is essential to the sound. That's what's getting that ambient texture out of that felt piano. If I turn this off, it's not the same. And I don't want to have to communicate to them that I need this reverb in a certain way, because they might not understand. They might put too much reverb, too little. They might mix it a certain way. So that's essential to this sound. Just leave it on. Guitars, any amp sims or things like that that are going to be shaping the sound and are going to be kind of giving it the character that you're after, such as this guitar strum that has a nice little amp sim. I want to keep this because it's integral to the sound. If I turn this off, it's not the same guitar anymore. And while, yes, somebody could infer what they want, or they might choose a different amp sim that's better, etc., it's not the song I sent them without this. So just keep that on. I would highly recommend, unless somehow the EQ is giving the sound character, for instance, if there's a radio vocal, you can leave a radio EQ on there because you want them to know that that's a radio, and that would be integral to the sound. But something like this is kind of a rough mix of this guitar. And while some engineers do love having as much of the mixing done for them as possible, this doesn't change the fact that you're giving them an incorrect view of what they're actually working with. If I export this EQ curve, when they open up the file on their end, their EQ is going to be flat. They aren't going to know what I did. And so if they then try to edit this, like say they want to boost this 3-band that I've pulled out, and I pull this up by 3 dB, they haven't actually boosted anything. They've just put it back to being flat. And that can get confusing, because then if they do something like this, they may think that's too much or too little. All sorts of weirdness can happen. Same with this little bump I have going on band number 5. If they try to turn this down, it might not actually turn down. Audio's relative. It becomes a whole mess. So unless this EQ is integral to the sound, make sure it's turned off. Just ensure that there's nothing really there. Same compression. We don't want any dynamics. Stereo shaping is debatable. It just depends on if you think you're going to be able to get away with it being used correctly. This is stereoized. It's a very subtle thing. The concern here is phase. If they put another stereo plugin on here, if they route it to a chorus, or they do some other stereo widening effect to it, and it doesn't agree with the stereo widener that I've put on it, we might have a problem. So if you think a phase issue is going to happen, or something weird might occur, turn off plugins like that. And who knows, your mix engineer, whoever you're sending it to, they may widen it and it turns out amazing. They may widen something else and it works better and they don't need to widen this. You don't want to lock them into anything because they each have a preference and they each are going to do things slightly differently to you. This reverb is essential to the sound. This EQ can be turned off. I need it as dry as possible. This vocal call, that EQ, forgive me, that reverb is essential. That's what's giving it that ambient air. And that is still EQable. They can side EQ it, they can EQ it by itself. You're not really creating too much extra work. You know, if I high passed this and low passed it and then they tried to boost or cut, that would be way too much work. On this guitar pad, same thing. This pad in particular is supposed to be an ambient holdout. If I turn off this reverb, it's not the same at all, and they may not get what I was going for. So just don't allow them to accidentally interpret something incorrectly. This last thing here is also just the guitar cabinet and the reverb. That's good. So to ensure that everything is a good volume, I'm going to save this as a different version. And I'm going to unity, or put to 0, on my faders here, all of these things. And I want that so that all the signals are strong. This ride is really quiet in the actual song, but I want my mix engineer to have the option to turn it down, pull it up without having to strain their ears to hear it. Same with this crash. That's going to be blowing my ears off now if I just play this now. But it'll still be good to hear everything. Next, what I want to do is I want to make sure that there's only one thing on each lane. Now, on most DAWs, like Logic Pro X and Pro Tools, this won't be an issue because you can't have multiple instruments occupying the same lane. It would occupy an insert over here. FL is a little bit quirky because you can have patterns and audio, and I can move this piano down here and layer it, and it'll still play fine. There's no lock-off between everything. So here we don't have to worry about this arrangement view over here and what's happening. We need to worry about the mixer. We want to make sure that everything is routed as separately as possible. And something that's interesting here is that this drum kit is actually all compressed onto one track. It's up to you if you want to split it. Some plugins allow you to split to the mixer. The standard practice that I would kind of adopt is clone this sampler, because each of these MIDI lanes is occupying a different hit. Copy and paste this data down all of them, and then put inserts in like the kick, snare, hi-hat, etc. I think personally the drums on this track sound fine just clumped together, but it can be difficult to mix, so that is up to you. The more separation, the better, unless you really think it isn't necessary, like with this drum kit just kind of occupying the right pocket and you don't want to have to mess with it and all that good stuff. So after confirming here, I can see that my piano, if I solo it, comes in on this insert. Nothing else is happening. Everything is good. Piano. Everything is good. Intro piano. That's good because it's still the same on my mixer. So when I start looking into the transition here, there might be a bit of a volume jump, but it won't be a huge deal, especially there. I can check my guitar strums. Yep, that's good. Nothing else comes through. I can even see it on this lane here. Yep, that's all good. Vocal calls, everything's good. We want to make absolutely certain that everything is separated on this mixer. Make sure the crash. Ooh, that's going to blow yours off. Drums. Correct. That's different than my ride here. Yep, correct. Everything looks to be in order. We'll test the bass. Yep, seems to be in order. Now that we've got everything confirmed and everything is strong signaled and easy, we're going to go up to File, Export, and we're going to choose a WAV file. You can decide where you want the output to be. I tend to want to go to my desktop, and I will make a new folder here, and I'll label it whatever the song is. This song happens to be from an artist named Dylan, and the song doesn't have a title, so I'll say Untitled 1 for the sake of argument. A good file format is artist name, comma, or hyphen. You know, you can do underscore, you can do hyphens, whatever you want to do. Untitled 1. And if you want to be really nice, put the BPM and the key. This is just in case there needs to be any vocal tuning, if they're going to put auto-tune on something, or if they're going to make additions, or they just want to know the key. There's a myriad of reasons that you might need it, including the BPM is the most essential part. It's really annoying if someone sends you a song with no BPM notation, and now you have to sit there and detect tempo, or guess at it, or take out your tap metronome. It's just wasting time we don't need to waste. So include it in the file. I've actually forgotten the key of this song, so I'm going to go and check to save someone else the trouble of figuring it out. From what I understand, this is in G major. We can double check and confirm. The only sharp I see is F sharp, so that's definitely correct. So I'll now go back, export, go back to my file name, and the key is G. Sometimes you'll see files being sent with no spaces and just underscores. The argument made for that is that it looks more professional. It's entirely up to you if you want to do it. If you're working with a company, I would recommend it because they're used to it and they really like it. If you're working with a big name, probably safe to just look professional, etc. Once I've named this file, I will go in here, and now I need to change the name that FL Studio, and probably your DAW, whatever you're using, has changed it to. Since the song is untitled, this doesn't really help, but we'll say Untitled, and put the artist name, etc. This is why it's important to name your mixer inserts over here. What FL Studio is going to do when you export out all these stems, it's going to put this text with whatever the text of your mixer is, the insert here afterward. And we need to make sure that it somewhat lines up with what it is. So if it's guitar, make sure that on the mixer it's called a guitar. You can even distinguish if it's acoustic or electric. Anything that's going to narrow down what it is at a glance without them having to sit there and look at it in any extreme sort of way. So now I'm going to hit save, making sure it's going to that file. And here I'm going to select split to mixer tracks and enable inserts, because if I untick this, it's going to send everything raw, which is fine on some songs if that's what you want. You can kind of skip the going plugin to plugin process and just send everything raw. But on this song, we have amp sim cabinets giving the guitar its sonic quality. So we need those. That's why we went through and disabled some and kept others. Once we have everything in check, set it to wave, 16-bit, really try and keep at it. 24 bits up, I prefer 16. Whatever they request, if they give you specifics, is fine. Studio quality is 24-bit, CD 16, etc., etc., etc. We don't need to touch any other settings except making sure that it's the full song up here, because wow, that would be unfortunate. And once we have all of our splits and everything else here, we'll hit start and just wait a bit. Now that everything's rendered out, we need to go to our desktop and make sure everything's good. So close the project. We'll navigate over to our file, and we'll see that we have a bunch of files in here. Before we look at this, we need to do some things. First off, we need to make a new text document and call it README, song info, anything is a good name. I'm going to go ahead and label it README for the sake of making it stand out. And if you want it to be at the top of this file instead of at the bottom, do 0-, because on Windows that will be, it'll go in order of number before it goes in order of alphabetical. Open that text document and we'll have this. Now what we're going to want is to write in here the key, which is G major / E minor. Just be as specific as possible. The BPM, which this is why we put this here. 116 is our BPM. So we need to make sure that that's notated in here. And then here you can put notes. So notes like, hey, this guitar at insert time code is supposed to be in the background, or I want the mix to sound like this song. Include a link to whatever song you're talking about. Mention any specific details that isn't immediately obvious, such as the ride at this section is supposed to be really quiet, or I envisioned the guitar sounding kind of like this. Put any note you can that will help navigate what's happening here in this file. The reason is, if all else fails, if for some reason the other person's computer doesn't recognize the title and it doesn't include the BPM, or it just becomes ASCII characters, file corrupts during sending, myriad of different things, sending it to a MacBook, a Linux OS, whatever. This text document is your last line of defense to explain to people what's going on, BPM, notes, and any other things. I don't have any notes for this song, so I'm going to leave this blank, but include anything here you can think of that might help. Now that we've got that figured out, we need to retest all of our stems. So what I'm going to do is open a new project, take my new file, select all these stems, and drop them in like so. We can see that a lot of these are really hot. And that is what we want. We want those to be able to turn down. What we don't want is any of these clipping. Luckily, this isn't clipping. Even though it looks it, you got to listen with your ears. And that means that when they route this to a mixer, it'll be really easy to turn down and they won't have to turn it up. Now, you'll notice in some of these files here that there's one here labeled current and one here labeled master. And if I solo these and look at these, hey, wait a minute, that's the whole song. This is an FL Studio quirk. I know of no other DAW that does this unless you specifically tell it to. I've even seen some people using FL Studio where it doesn't do this. Perhaps I have a setting ticked that I don't know about. But we don't want to send this as a stem, because if we drag this in and start immediately working, whoa, what's happening? We don't want that at all. So we want to go into our folder here and hunt down current. Now, when I try to delete this file, FL Studio and Windows is going to throw a fit because it's open in another program. How to fix this is click on this, and you'll see it's selected over here in your sequencer. Right-click and delete. Now, FL Studio is technically not accessing the file. You can go back over here, delete, and it's gone. This saves time. You don't have to close FL Studio and re-import every time. Find the file in FL. We can see that this current down here, this master, is once again also the full song. So locate it in our file system. It's towards the bottom. There it is, master. And we'll try to delete it. It's being occupied by a program. Double click. Here it is. Right click, delete. Go back here. Try again. And it's gone. Now we'll close FL. Open everything up. Redrag everything in. And make sure that everything imports right. And I can see there's my ride, there's my piano, there's the felt. It's pretty quiet, but they can clip gain it. There's just nothing to be done about that particular one because it is a background reverberated effect. What can you do? And then really we can just check this. That's exported correct. Ah, here we go. This is a route with nothing on it because it's a MIDI lane I ended up not using when I exported all these stems. And this is why we need to check, because if I send this over, they might think I'm supposed to use this. And they may tell me that there's a corrupted file or something's gone wrong, when in reality, I didn't mean to send it. So we just need to want to check all these lanes and make sure that we catch all of these before we send everything out. So that is the electric guitar muted. Let's find it in our file system. Let's confirm. There's nothing here. Literally nothing. We'll try to delete it. It won't let us. Delete. Yep. Try again. And it's gone. I will now open a new project, new from empty. Grab all my files again. And check again. Do this as many times as it takes. And we want to save them time. And this is why we need to name our mixers as well, because now I don't have to waste time saying what stuff is. This is a crash, this is a guitar pad, and when I click on this and solo it, it is indeed a pad. This is indeed a vocal call. This is my drum kit. If you drag your files in here and they have some name like .oog, .ogg, .whatever, just fix it. Name it. Open up your file here, press F2 if you're on Windows, and type what it is. Just save people time and make them happy to work with you. It really goes a long way. From what I can tell, all of this is good. The bass has come through. The felt piano is through. This piano is also through. There's our intro. There's the piano. There's the ride. Here's my pad. Yep. Everything is good. And we can even test this by setting our project to 116 and making sure that everything lines up. And it does. So now that we have everything mapped up, lined up, the tempo is correct, Keys notated. We have our extra file at the top here, ensuring that there's no way they can mistake it. We have our notes here if someone needed them, etc., etc. We can close this, and now we have to worry about getting this to them. I highly recommend you use WinRAR for this. Almost everybody has it. Mac users tend to have 7-zip, but it can still open a WinRAR archived folder. So right-click, WinRAR, add to archive, and make sure you check zip. Do not send a RAR file. WinRAR can open a RAR file. It is possible, and it's not really hard for WinRAR to do it, but if someone with 7-zip or some other format tries to open this RAR file, there is a chance that it will mess it up if it's a RAR file. Whereas a zip just tends to have more compatibility across 7-zip or, zip opener, whatever. Don't touch anything but the archive format. Keep the name the same. Don't select anything. Don't password lock it. Just leave it. Hit OK. All of this will put together, and now we have a zip folder that is workable. The question after this then is, what do I use to send it? WeTransfer is the industry standard for sending large files. Just look up WeTransfer on Google and you'll find a page that looks like this. You can add files here and you send it to someone's email. What's really nice about this is that when we select our file and hit open, we have up to a gigabyte of space on the free version. If your song is over a gig, you probably are making enough money from your music to be able to pay for WeTransfer. Hopefully, if you're just doing this for fun or you're not as invested in the industry and this is just something you like doing on the side, you won't have a massive file that'll lock you out of using WeTransfer. You'll include the email too. You'll put your own email, and then you can also include a message. But this is also why we have our text document inside of that file in case they don't read the message or they're just busy, they forget the message, etc. You can copy and paste that document's information here, etc. And then you'll hit transfer. What WeTransfer will do is it'll let you set when this file expires. So if you're working on a sensitive project, time sensitive, etc., there isn't the worry about someone stealing it or leaking it outside of any accidents that might happen at the receiving end. Another option is Mediafire. Mediafire is pretty nice, but it does have some limitations. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to drag your file into your Mediafire, and it will start uploading. You don't need an account to do this. You can see that I have a trial account up here because I'm not registered. Basically what will happen is 2 weeks, 14 days roughly after you upload here, the link will stop working and the file will disappear. So it kind of auto-terminates for you if you're worried about a leak, just like with WeTransfer. Mediafire links are really nice and easy. Basically, once this file is uploaded, you can click on it and it'll take you to a separate page and you send the person either through Discord, Instagram, to iMessage, whatever you want to do, that link. They click on it, they open it, they download it. Once they have confirmed with you that they have downloaded it, you come over here and click the move to trash and it will be deleted. Or you wait 14 days and it auto-terminates. The other option is file.io. It's kind of sketchy, I'm not going to lie. It depends on how important of a project you have. But just like with some of these others, when I drag my file in here and start uploading, unlike the other sites, it will let me set very specifically when stuff expires. You can say a couple hours afterwards, you can say a month, you can say 14 days, you can say 13 days and 6 hours. It really doesn't matter. If someone's poaching this, I don't know, forgive me for the poor recommendation, but it's always worked for me and it's really not that hard. And finally, the last option is to use Google Drive via Google Gmail and include it as an attachment or just attach your file to an email, etc., etc. And that really is how you send stems. Ensure that there's a nice document. Ensure that everything is named, and order isn't super important, but, your mixer or whoever you're sending it to will rearrange it. It's just easier if they have the names. Ensure it's in a zip, not a RAR folder. Send it in an easy-to-open format. either via Mediafire, WeTransfer, email, etc. And good luck out there.